going to be a little more of that coming up. Just saying. Just saying. Well, for you, Kenji, I surveyed the world. And when I say world, I'm talking about the whole planet Earth. I had no responses from Antarctica, so I can't say that. What questions I wanted to ask you about trauma. And here comes the number one. The number one.
Absolutely.
Seatbelt sign, abdominal seatbelt sign. It's not going to be Family Feud where you get to pick from it or anything. So the EAST guidelines say somebody with a seatbelt sign, if you have fluid, if you see fluid on there, do a DPL or go to the OR. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. It also says if there's a seatbelt sign, they don't need to go to the OR. They should be admitted for observation. I will tell you, if I have a negative CT, I'm not admitting people with a seatbelt sign. I say, come back if you're sick. Well, don't come back if you're septic. That's kind of bad form. Well, no, do come back if you're septic. But what to make of this? What should we make of this? What should be our thinking? Should they all be imaged? What do we do with the findings on that imaging?
I think that's a great question, super practical. And I would say that if they, like you
Validated
said,
by Kenji Inaba, thank you.
If they do have those things, the peritonitis, all those other things, they just go straight to the operating room. For all other patients, having a seatbelt sign by itself is probably not sufficient to drive you to go to the operating room. So it's not an indication to go to the OR, but because there's a much higher rate of intra-abdominal injury, I think it's worth getting a CT scan in all of these patients. And if it's positive, they can go to the operating room. If it is negative, yes, I would send these patients home. So all they have is a seatbelt sign, and they're otherwise totally normal, CT scan negative, I think you should send them home. Everybody in between, and it's that mesenteric stranding or a tiny bit of free fluid, those are the patients that you should observe. And we would typically observe them for a 24-hour period.
So straight to the OR if there's peritoneal findings. Everybody with a seatbelt sign, you would CT them. And if they're negative, home, of course, with recheck. Because the thing we worry about, solid organ injury we'll see, is small bowel injury. And, can you have a totally negative CT with small bowel injury?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. I would say that it is exceedingly unlikely. Very, very unlikely. Our group just published a very small retrospective series looking specifically at this, and Liz Benjamin was one of our partners who did this, and in doing the lit search, you can see that more and more as time goes forward, the ability of these CT scans to rule out an injury is getting better and better. So I would say with what we have now, with a fully normal CT scan, totally negative, I think you can send that patient home. It's the people that have something, the mesenteric stranding, the free fluid, those are the patients that we need to watch.
And we all, with the caveat, we all know, I know, the audience knows, we all know the apocryphal tale of the patient who, someone saw them and they came in days later septic from their small bowel injury. It happens, it is rare, it's probably in the realm of anecdote, I'd say.
Exactly, and you can't, for everybody sitting here, this is something that you're gonna deal with, there's no question. And so if you get that CAT scan that's totally negative, I think it's fully defensible to send them home. And I would support doing that, and that's what we do.
Get a CT, OR if positive, home if negative, and they're not have other things going on. Well, what about this? Question number 2 was the neck seatbelt sign. You've got the EAST guidelines say that this is a crash test dummy, but a neck seatbelt sign, you talked about clothesline injuries, a neck seatbelt sign should not be an indication all by itself to get CT angio, because we're worried about the vascular injury. But Biffle says, in another recommendation or guideline, that if there's pain, swelling, or altered mental status, that you should get imaging. I don't think, unless it's kind of like a phantom seatbelt sign, I don't think I've ever seen somebody without pain who had a seatbelt sign.
And I think that's the point. I would agree with what Walt says with the Denver group,
Walt Biffle,
and the Denver group, and I would also agree with the EAST guidelines, knowing that what makes up the scientific foundation for the EAST guidelines are all small retrospective studies, but nevertheless, the reason, I think the practical interpretation of those is that it is, like you said, so uncommon for someone to come in with a true, real seatbelt sign that is totally asymptomatic, that the reality is the vast majority will get scanned. Maybe it's not for the seatbelt sign itself, but for the collateral swelling or the stiffness or the pain. But I think that will get the vast majority of them scanned. And I think that the right test in 2015 is a CT angio.
Yeah, and I think it is rare. It is so rare to see somebody who doesn't have symptoms. Occasionally you do say, hey, what? You got a big bruise on your neck.
No.
I will tell you, my bias is if I see that big bruise on their neck, I think that there was enough force to make that bruise. I'm scanning them.
And you would just hate to miss something. I really would hate to miss something. So yes, we, in our practice, would get a CT scan for that.
You know what else you'd hate to miss as well? Another round of ED or no ED.
All right.
Do you remember the ice bucket challenge?
Yes.
Yeah, remember that? Did you do the
Yes.
ice bucket challenge?
I did not. I did not.
I did that. Not well. My kids did it, and it was kind of a thing. Well, some people took it to an extreme, such as this guy. So let's just watch the beginning, and you can guess ED or no ED.
Okay. Which one is it? Which one? It's the one on your left. Push it away. This one? Yeah.
Okay, Kenji,
Okay.
trauma surgeon of the decade, of the century. Here, pre-hospital.
That, I mean, it's high up there, but he looks like a pretty tough guy. So I'm gonna go with no ED.
Kenji's going no ED.
I
wish you had some ESP and you could see what happened in the future because. Oh! The final insult. Final insult. Now, Kenji, I'd hate to cross you, but hang on. No ED? ED. Sorry. ED.
Yeah,
I think
you
so
win.
too.